Tony.
All right, we're live. Hi, Tony. That was Tony. That's our cat, Tony. He might show up at some point, I hope.
At least three. We're surrounded by three cats. One's asleep, two are awake.
Yeah. We always hope they're going to get up on screen and say hello, but they're always sort of shy. Wiki was up last week a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, well, as you can see, we are coming to you again from our living room. My knee is actually doing better. I still don't want to walk up any more stairs than I need to and try to fit behind the desk in the tiny little room that we use as our studio because it's not good. So we're out here for another day. Still ice in my knee. Doing good though. It's turned a corner on Saturday and the swelling's down, so it's just a matter of letting it heal up. But
Being able to put strength back onto it. And
yeah. I've been walking like a 90-year-old person. It hasn't been good. It takes me forever to get anywhere.
Yeah.
It's super annoying. But
it's not annoying for me. But
what's annoying for me when I have to go to the bathroom and it takes me 10 minutes to walk up the damn stairs. Like 1 foot and then the other foot and 1 foot and the other foot.
Sneak preview of senior citizenship.
Yeah, it's not gonna be fun. We gotta find a house without stairs.
No, we gotta
Too many damn stairs.
We have one set of stairs. Well, we have three sets of stairs. One going into the basement, one going to the bedrooms, and one going to the attic.
And then the one in the front.
Yes.
Too many stairs. Stairs are stupid. Hi, buddy.
That's Tony.
Stairs are terrible design. All right. So as always, what stupid thing has the Trump administration done this week?
Oh God!
It's a doozy this week. We have so much to talk about.
Let's start with the big one. The big $45 million one.
That was what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, Trump threw himself a parade disguised as a 250th anniversary of the Army parade. Granted, the parade was already in the works just because, that's a big deal. That's actually pretty cool. But let's not, it was on the day that was his birthday. And let's not think that he didn't, have so much of a hand in pushing it through because it was a magnanimous decision, an altruistic decision on his part to celebrate the Army.
I had forgotten about the Trump parade, and I found this out by coming home and watching my wife watching the Trump parade.
It started at 6.
Yeah.
I tuned in about a quarter till, because I was napping and getting food and stuff, and it just happened to show up on the TV when I turned it on. I was like, oh, that's right. That's tonight. So I did miss all the cool, old shit, but I watched it from about a quarter till 7 until about 8 something. Dan, you got home at what, 7:30?
Roughly around 7:30. And like I said, I walked in on my wife watching this, and I'm kind of like,
It was actually more embarrassing than having to walk on me watching porn.
I'd rather see you cheating on me, to tell you the truth. It's like you couldn't have found somebody to have hot sex with and even walk in on this stuff.
No, of course not.
No, you gotta be watching the boring horse shit that I've seen. It was the antithesis of a pride parade.
Nobody was proud. Nobody was happy.
No, even the soldiers that were there. I want to say out of the estimated 10,000 person crowd, several thousand were there too, because for the same reason parents are there for their kids at graduation.
I think the estimates were 6,700 troops and about 10,000 in the audience.
Yeah.
Including on the giant dais that was erected, that was very obviously compensating for things.
I've seen more impressive AEW television in 2024.
There's Tony. Hi, Tony. You're on camera, buddy.
Tony.
Look, you're on camera. Look,
everyone on the camera wants to eat me. Buddy.
Yeah, that was something. I had my phone up with the camera on, and I was like zoomed into the TV, and I was taking pictures of how bored everyone looked.
Yes.
And how sparsely populated all of everything was. And I found out later, in talking with some friends online and doing, learning about research that they had done, that there have been thousands of Marines and National Guardsmen calling in to a hotline to report not non-compliance, but
passive resistance.
No. What was the thing in the 70s when people fled to Canada?
Like because of Vietnam.
Yeah.
What's the term? Oh,
No. The other term.
Expats.
No. People, just to report that they didn't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
To keep themselves from getting into trouble.
Conscientious
objectors, yes.
Okay.
Because of the situation in LA, which is still going on. And so there have been thousands. And a discovery by a friend of mine on Facebook who is has family who had served in the armed forces for a very long time. They were having a discussion about nobody was wearing dress uniforms, which is common for large gatherings like this. And, some people were wearing historical costumes, but a lot of people were not wearing historical uniforms, and were just wearing, like, their normal fatigues, but not any kind of dress uniform.
I want to say the people that I did see that were in the procession that were in dress uniform were people from, like, ROTC groups.
No, the West Point and the Citadel students were like the only ones that were A, wearing dress uniforms, and B, actually taking the time to march in procession.
Yeah.
And it was brought to my attention that the reason probably that a lot of these soldiers were wearing fatigues and making it a point to not march in unison was because it was passive resistance to having to do this. Most of them look pretty embarrassed, quite frankly. So it actually doesn't come to too much of a shock to me. But, so there were about 10,000 people in attendance to this $40 billion birthday parade.
40 million.
What did I say?
40 billion.
Oh, no, 40 million. I'm sorry.
It's still bad. It's $40 million. And it's
I said 40 million, but my nose is just stuffy.
Fine.
40 million. Not 40 billion. But at the same time, earlier that day, across the entire country, there were, 10 point something million Americans out protesting against the Trump administration. 10,000 to 10 million.
Everywhere from large cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York.
Philly was a big one.
And even small towns like
Hollidaysburg, there were like, which is like maybe half the size of Altoona. Yeah. It's the county seat in Blair County where we're at, and there were still like 200-300 people down there protesting.
Yeah.
Which is where I would have been if I hadn't screwed up my knee. Yeah. So, it was, towards the end, when they zoomed in on his face, he looked just absolutely miserable. Yeah. The Schadenfreude was high that day, my friends. It's pretty funny, actually. He's just, he's such a sad little bitch.
I think I think on one end, it was, again, it was right saying being that embarrassed, but I want to say, I was reading down comments of like various things on Facebook, various things talking about what the demonstrations that happened and the parade. And your pro-Trump people were basically like, well, he's still your president. And it's like, I had this mixed reaction, and part of it was leading toward, well, you guys were oblivious to the American, a large section of the American public's dissatisfaction with his performance. To be kind. On the other end, I don't know, but I'm not going to cheat for this.
Cognitive dissonance?
No. I'm going to say is the Trump supporters are not 100% entirely wrong on some aspects. In this context, and this
No,
one,
no,
on this
explain
one,
yourself. It's
and
fine.
there's one and only context. Demonstrations are great. Showing a public dissatisfaction is great. What needs to happen now
Continued action.
continue action, organization,
Mhm.
and that's where
That's where
things are,
Americans tend to fall short.
well, Americans in general, but I would say your leftist liberals,
Oh, definitely.
the establishment Democratic Party, all falls flat. This is where, okay, the demonstration was great. Trump looks embarrassed. We shown our discontent, but going to a demonstration is one thing. Political action and organization is a totally different monster. And right now, that's sorely lacking.
Yeah, and I think the problem is people are like, "Oh, look what we did." Now we can
Right.
stop.
We went.
No.
We went to a
It
party.
needs to keep going. It needs to get bigger.
Yeah. We went
But
to an angry party. Great.
yeah.
But I think I made cute signs. Great. But I do that for. Again, I'm not trying to downplay the demonstrations.
No, it was
But
fantastic. It was amazing. But what needs to happen is continued pressure, continued action, or literally what those Trump people are saying. Well, he's still your president. Yeah,
is right.
and literally nothing will come of it, and it will remain how it is,
Yeah.
and just get worse.
They are broken clock in this place.
Yes.
And it's one instance. So from the mouth of malformed babes.
But yeah, so that was a hell of a weekend.
Yeah.
So coming up this week it's the 16th. So coming up in 3 days, it's going to be Juneteenth, which is much like Pride Month, no longer a thing recognized by the U.S. government, thanks to Trump. Pretty early on in his administration, he basically sent out a memo saying there's no Black History Month, nor Pride Month, nor Juneteenth, Women's History Month. Oh, there was like 11 of them. Asian American Pacific Islanders History Month, I think. Hispanic and Latino History Month.
Asian American.
I just said that, yeah.
I wasn't just about.
I remember the count because I wrote it down in my journal. There were 11.
Yes.
11 things throughout the whole year that the government would no longer be recognizing or financially supporting celebrations for. Yeah. And Juneteenth, I can almost guarantee you that since that was made a federal holiday by Joe Biden, it was one of his first actions when he got in, a very early action and during his administration. That was like what led to all of this. Like we got to destroy this because Trump hates Biden. Clearly, he's still railing about Joe Biden. And
the irony is in many of the speeches, either by him or by sycophants like Stephen Miller or Karen Levitt, he paints Joe Biden as this borderline communist revolutionary, radical leftist, and anybody that's left of Mnuchin is like Joe Biden. Joe Biden that's trying to stop forced who was some support of forced busing in the 70s.
Yeah,
Joe Biden of the crime bill. Joe Biden.
Yeah. He is not a leftist revolutionary. He's half of our government wasn't taken over by unbelievably hyper-conservative morons, he would be considered a centrist Republican.
Yeah. He's definitely he's a borderline blue dog Democrat. I say the one thing he did on social issues, he did completely by accident, and that's the whole getting don't ask, don't tell repealed when Obama was president. That was a gaffe.
Well, that was when he was vice president.
Yeah,
He
I
also helped change Obama's opinion on marriage equality.
Yeah.
Because at first, a lot of people don't realize this. Obama was against, he was for civil partnerships, but against extending marriage rights to same-sex couples.
Yeah.
And that was actually Biden who kind of pushed him over to the right side of history in that regard. So you have to give him credit for that too. But the Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a complete accident on his part.
Literally, the whole getting it to spin into action was based on a gaffe by Joe Biden. He was,
was it? Or was he just playing three-dimensional chess? No, it was a gaffe.
I don't think he plays a regular two-dimensional chess.
I don't think he does.
I think he likes.
He's more of a checkers guy.
Yeah, checkers.
Where Trump is like a go fish kind of a guy.
He's in. Trump was ants in the pants.
Don't break the ice.
Yeah, don't break the ice. I ain't the best in operation. I never touch the side. Ask Melania. Oh, I went there.
Oh, Tony's judging you.
Yeah. He's a nice guy. No, he's not.
Tony.
Make him great again. Oh, God damn it, Tony, get out of here.
So anyway, Juneteenth. For those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, well, first, do you not know what it is, Tony?
Well, we're about to educate you.
So Juneteenth, this is actually pretty cool. It's the only holiday that is a portmanteau. For those of you who don't know, the portmanteau is two words that are joined together at a similar sounding syllable. So it's June 19th, which becomes portmanteaued as Juneteenth. I love portmanteaus, not as much as I love puns, but very close, very close. So I definitely appreciate
I call portmanteaus festive contractions.
Yeah, that works too. Yeah. They're fun. So anyway, Juneteenth is the day that celebrates when all of the slaves confined in chattel slavery in the United States were officially freed. It takes place. It took place June 19th, 1865, which, as you'll remember, is the year that the Civil War ended. But it's also
13th Amendment.
And 13th Amendment. But it was also between 2.5 to 3 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It took that long for the news to reach slaves in Texas that they had been freed, and they were the last group of chattel slaves in the United States. I say specifically chattel slaves because, well, this is a topic for another program, but there are, other forms of slavery in the United States and have been since then.
Also the world, yes.
Also the world, yes. It was established in 2021. Yeah. So that's kind of a cool little holiday. It was not little. You got to understand we're both white people.
Yeah.
So it's different for us. I think it's pretty cool that it's a national holiday. It in no way makes up for the years of abuse by the government, legal abuse on the heads of people of color in this country.
The various atrocities that happened between 1619 and present.
Yeah, which would actually, I feel, be made quite a bit better with if reparations were implemented, because it's not just people who lived through. Because, like Dan likes to say, this is like one of the coolest things. History is cumulative, so you can't just say, "All right, well, this terrible thing in history has ended, so now you all have equal rights and equal footing." That's just not true in the slightest.
I tell people that the history of the African American in this country, whether it be through slavery, Jim Crow, or post Jim Crow issues, I liken it to one of those kidnapping horror movies where slavery was like when the people, imagine somebody gets abducted and taken to their some guy's home in a cabin, is left in the basement for years to toil away, is tortured, beaten, and deprived of all rights for a number of years. And then let's say 5, 6, 7 years, just to condense it down to time. This guy is so the guy that kidnaps is all right. You're free. You're free to go. I'm not going to torture you. The door's open. You're free to leave. So what's the catch? Oh yeah, the nearest town is like 50 miles away. So you got to get there on your own. And that for me is Jim Crow. The years, and on top of that,
Because it's like we're you have nothing to build from.
yeah.
And you're literally just kind of being thrown out into the world with absolutely nothing and trying to not die.
And on top of that, I'm occasionally going to come by on your journey towards the town and harass you and shoot at you and throw Molotov cocktails at you. But,
Oh, and I'm going to go ahead of you when you get to the town
yeah,
and talk to everybody at the bank and make sure that you can't get any money or get a mortgage for a house
yeah,
or get a job.
yeah.
We're gonna put up
I'm going
different.
to make sure you're deprived of, and like the end of Jim Crow, I'm going to make sure you're, yeah, obviously you can like vote and all that, but like you're going to have all this like,
Yeah.
people are
Are
going
you going to be able to get to the polls alive?
yeah,
Because that was the thing that happened in some places.
yeah. But I mean, I guess to break it more down more accurately, you have the slavery years of beginning in some protoform in 1619, being codified between the 1640s and the 1680s. After that, you have under colonial Britain, British America until the 1780s, and then you have slavery in multiple different forms depending on which state you were in, but they all have similar characteristics. That lasting all the way till 1865. And between 1865 and 1876 to 1880, you have Reconstruction, which ultimately fails. Like yes, it does produce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which are great, but it does not fully enfranchise former slaves and African Americans in general, not just in the South, where eventually Jim Crow would rise, but also in the North, where you have, like Sue said, you had people redlining issues, you had problems with, there were still forms of a light segregation.
Oh yeah. Please don't think that in the North things were just some kind of a paradise. It definitely was not. And we all have to recognize that nowhere in the United States, no matter how progressive, was safe from racial regression.
Yeah.
Basically.
Then I guess around 1964 and 1965, you had a series of civil rights bills that fully, I say fully enfranchise African Americans as in terms of voting rights and citizenship.
Well, when did women of color, African American women, didn't get the right to vote until?
No, it was universal.
That's right. No.
It's still 1965 for everybody.
That's right. Yeah.
Everybody could vote.
Because there were still Native American people were still denied the right to vote up until the mid 1900s. I can't remember when exactly it was, but there were groups of people in the United States that were still denied the right to vote up until the 1900s.
But
I can't remember when though. I should have written this down.
But here's the thing, though. Once, and this is usually like your conservative argument, is like, okay, you either have one group of conservatives that say that when the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments were passed, all that, anything that happened after that is, that's the fault of black people. That's the fault of African Americans.
Yeah, they can't.
They can't pick themselves
they're
up.
fully enfranchised now, so but the problem is, it's like you don't have generational wealth is a huge deal. especially when you own your own. Actually, this is actually something very personal to me. Redlining in the United States, in some parts of the United States, was going on up until the 60s, 70s, under different names than just redlining. Sometimes it was just, well, we just, whatever. The bank decides comes up with bullshit excuses, but it was legally happening until the mid 60s, and then illegally happening under different names until about the 70s. Meanwhile, my mother's mother, her family, her dad owned land. He was a farmer in Carrolltown, and up the mountain from where we are now. That's what we call it. He owned land. My grandmother's brother, Don, stayed in the family homestead, and my grandmother inherited a big piece of property that was part of his farm after my great-grandfather died, and they sold it to another farm in the area. So they literally, did not have to buy property. They didn't have to pay mortgages. On the other side, my father's mother's family came over from Italy in 1912. My grandmother was born in 1913. In the very small town, a slightly bigger town than Carrolltown, called Patton, where I'm from. Also from. It's weird. Like, my mom's from one place, my dad's from another place, but they're like 5-10 minutes apart. So in the tiny town where they ended up, there was I guess you would call it a foundry, but it was like for clay. It's called the Clay Works. And they produced bricks, some of which actually lined the base of the Eiffel Tower. Which is pretty cool. Anyway, they produced bricks. They produced pipes, terracotta pipes. A long time ago. I don't know if anybody's ever seen anything like that. And with the use of the railroads being pretty big in this area, it was like they'd make a factory, ship them out all over the world. It was a huge business. And in Patton now, you can still trace the lineages of all the old Italian families back to Calabria. I'm cousins with all of them. Everyone that's still, it's, they're all pretty old now, but when I was a kid, it was, but the thing is that my family came over in 1912 to work at this factory, and they were given a house by the factory. My family still lives in that house, and that was my great-grandfather passed down to my grandmother, to my dad. My dad and my uncle still live there, and then when they are gone, my brother and sister have decided that it's probably going to go to me. And then when I'm gone, the only one left to give it to is my nephew. So that's going to be 6 generations of family that have lived in that house. And 4 generations of adults that have never had to pay mortgages. And since my family's still like a weirdo immigrant family, we're all like a bunch of generations all crammed into this goofy house. So it's like, nobody's ever had to pay, like, live on their own and take care of things up until, like, me and my sister and my brother all kind of moved out on our own at different points. And so it's, at the same time, okay, so 70 years, 60, what was it? Okay, 50 years. 50 years after redlining became legal in this country, my family had already been here and established a home in a house they were given for free. Like, housing costs are huge sources of, as all of you know now, we're facing a huge housing crisis, and rents are out of control, and it's, if you spend your entire life renting, you have nothing to pass down to future generations.
Yeah, because rent is not counted as some form largely isn't counted towards your credit score. It
Yeah,
isn't
which
counted.
is screwed up.
It isn't counted towards any kind of when you go a loan application for down payment on a home. Basically, your rent history is never counted as a positive.
Yeah.
Missing rent payments are often counted in the negative.
Yeah.
Which
But the thing is, it's like you can't hand down rented property.
No, you don't.
And
You
if
don't.
you have, and so you run into this situation where, like, my dad has a shit ton of money. He's lived at home his entire life. He's never had to make a mortgage payment his entire life. It's a duplex. I should say that. It's not just one big house. It's like a duplex. So he had his own apartment. It wasn't that weird. It's still weird, but it's not that weird. But, and it's like, if you die and you're renting, what do you have to give to the next generation?
Yeah.
So, if you are legally barred from buying property and all you can do is rent to people who, and as an example, our current president and his father, have every right to charge, to get price gouge people based on their race, who, can refuse to rent to you based on your race for a long time. Not only can you not find appropriate housing that you can afford, but, you have nothing, physically, you have no real, your home belongs to someone else and you cannot, have future generations live there. You can't have future generations sell that. It's a huge tangible thing that so many people were barred from having, that was just handed to white people in some instances, and okay, so that's my weird personal story about how redlining is just unbelievably unfair, and how, like, you can't just you can't make someone just run uphill and then complain that they have no energy to do anything by the time they get to the top. And that's what this was for generations and generations. People, people of color in general in this country, but specifically African American people, have had to jump through far more hoops than white people just to survive. Mm. Not even to live on an equal basis, just to get by, just to keep going. And you have to keep in mind that in a lot of because like my mom's 76, 77 this year. This happened in her lifetime. Ruby Bridges, who was one of the first African American girls to go to a white school. She was in 4th grade, I think. When this happened, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of a little girl with National Guardsmen walking around her. That was Ruby Bridges. She's a couple of years older than my mom. And she had to go to elementary school with National Guardsmen to keep her safe. And it's like, I don't think a lot of people get what the world was like for people of color, in some people's living memory. And so just to just kind of dismiss the struggles of so many people as just, oh, they're just lazy, that's why they haven't gotten ahead, while completely undermining the fact that the entire government of the United States for years was legally, holding them back. It's laughable. That kind of judgment is unbelievably short-sighted. It's bullshit. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. It's fucking bullshit. You don't know anything about history if you actually think that. And you also don't understand, like what Dana said, like history is cumulative. You cannot enforce legal trauma for generations and generations on people and just be like, oh, they're fine. Just let it go. It's fine.
I think there's a false analogy because like a lot of people I want to say everybody from like your Candace Owens to your Thomas Sowells, um, both on the black conservative side as well as other white persons, both either Republican politicians or even those within racist organizations, or quote unquote racist thought leaders. Love, but it's a whole different group, and they each have their different points and like fine points and stances on the issue. Some people love to bring up the idea of the how African Americans are having certain economic and social mobility issues, and blame a lot of it on the. I want to say one of their favorites ones to go back to is the issue of black fatherhood.
Oh, which is complete bullshit.
It is quite debunking the idea that like if that's the case, why is it so much more disproportionate in that these economic issues are prevalent in black populations, and we don't see the same figures in white people that are in two parent homes or in one parent homes at the same rates or at the same like there's
Yeah, it's like, why are you only studying this part of the population instead of all parts of the population? The effects of, divorce growing up in single parent homes in all parts of the population instead of just this specific one that you can use as, fuel to be a racist asshole. Because that's what you're doing.
more willing to like we make the argument is more of a centerpiece along the like black fatherhood, lack of black fatherhood, and your subsequent welfare claims. And usually the argument is when
Reaganism, welfare queen.
Well, yeah, but we get there. But they kind of go back to Johnson and the war on poverty and the introduction of things like Medicaid and enfranchisement of certain welfare programs that get extended to the black community, food stamps, etc., etc. And the mindset is if you introduce the before then they said, well, if you go to figures back to the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, there was a higher rate of black people in married homes, and after 1965, the divorce rate skyrockets, and they make a quote unquote direct. They make a direct connection. It's more of a correlation between the introduction of all these programs and saying that, well, women lost the incentive to stay married because they don't, because if they are married with the parents, with the fathers, it leads to they get deprived of their welfare benefits, so they stay single, they don't get married, and they stay on the programs. It's a vicious cycle, and
the problem is it's massively skewed research coming from the standpoint of a biased misconception that they do not extend to the rest of the population racially. It sort of starts and ends there, saying, "See, we told you."
So why don't they make the same connection with white families? Why don't they make this discussion with Asian families? Why don't they make this connection with any other group but African Americans? They never seem to make this correlation when it comes to cumulative historical effects of Jim Crow, of post Jim Crow, of redlining, of slavery. But when it comes to like the whole Black Fathers and Welfare Queens, oh, it's totally indicative.
In order to throw them under the bus and not to recognize their own short-sightedness in refusing to understand the history that led up to, present day. It's so.
I think it also ignores the advent of the loosening of divorce laws in starting in the late 1950s and going all the way to the mid 1970s.
Yeah, and also not only that, no fault divorce, but also the fact that women were able to retain jobs.
Yeah.
Not that, they weren't, they had certain job protections. They were able to open their own bank accounts in the 70s. Yeah.
The enfranchisement of women
led to higher divorce rates.
Yeah.
Because why are you going to stay married to this thing if you don't need to?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to remain married to someone in order to survive.
You don't.
If they're a piece of shit, you get to divorce them and you get to live your own fucking life.
Yeah. And things like,
awesome.
all the way up until the 70s, like, forms of spousal abuse was accepted
legally.
Like, a husband up to a certain point could beat their wife, and it would be, it's an accepted legal practice. It was a cultural norm. Again, I tend to think your folks like your Thomas Souls, your Candace Owens, your Larry Elders, your other white pundits that espouse, I guess, the punditry's points, and the racists that skew it to comical, farcical proportions also fit into that category.
Yeah, which is why, all of this being said, which is why Juneteenth should still remain something to be celebrated for African Americans and all Americans of all races. Just because, it's actually kind of ironic when you think about it. Just because it took 2.5 years, between 2.5 and 3 years, for the news to reach enslaved people in Texas that they were no longer enslaved. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it was an afterthought for the white people to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like Juneteenth is a reminder for all of us to not, consider the fact that, the United States of America as a whole, historically and currently, would not be, if it would not be what we are today, mostly for the good parts, if it wasn't for, the strength and action and the leadership and the the vision of African American people, especially African American women. So, yeah, it needs to not remain an afterthought. It needs to be remembered as something important and not treated the way it was historically.
I think, on top of that, I think the importance of things like Juneteenth, I think the importance of things like Pride Month, I think the importance of things like your Black History Month or other observances of other minority groups in the United States is to reinforce the point that the American experience is not a generic monolith.
Absolutely. It is hugely personal at times. It is specifically racial at times. It is specifically gendered or, but we are all parts of this incredible tapestry that right now is not doing so great. But,
Yeah.
That if we remember that fact, we'll get better.
Being who you are, what you are, where you come from, will definitely alter one's experience and how one sees this country. And of course, individual factors will also shape how that experience is interpreted. But even that, I think, needs to be observed, sometimes celebrated, sometimes reviled, depending upon the experience. I've often said in the past that history, its names and places and dates and events are its length and its width, but the perspective is the depth. And I think that depth is important. Again, that perspective is important. Again, I'll take one is things like Reconstruction. Depending on who you were, I think your white person of like 3 or 4 generations deep that goes back before the Civil War or back to the Revolution is going to have a totally different experience than what Reconstruction is your newly freed slave, as opposed to, say, the Native American of that time, as opposed to your new immigrant coming in between the 1840s and the 1870s. They're all going to have a different perspective on what America was and where they thought America was going. And I think it's important to teach that.
A great example of that is the Frederick Douglass oration, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." Because while to white people the 4th of July means one thing, to people like Frederick Douglass, who had been once enslaved, it really didn't mean much at all, because the words in the Constitution that all men were created equal rang obscenely hollow, quite frankly. And it was only through decades and generations of hard work and suffering that, that those words actually even sort of started to resemble reality. But do you have anything else to say on Juneteenth? I wanted to talk about the trans women in sports, but
No,
I don't want to cut you off if you have anything else, because I know I've been talking a lot about this. And again, you have to remember, we're white people, so we have we're looking at this through the eyes of like outsiders, but having white privilege as we do, we do still think it's important that we use that privilege to try to be like, hey, other white people, you're missing the point here.
There's no reason to
take things into consideration.
Nobody's
that's their job.
Nobody's telling you to feel guilty. Nobody saying you should.
Do not feel guilty.
I'm not telling. White liberals are all right. Most white liberals are not telling you to feel guilty. Sure, some stupid white liberals, they exist. They're probably telling you because they're not. It's like, don't feel like, I don't want you to feel guilty. I don't want you to feel remorse. I want you to.
You need to understand the things that you have had easier because of your skin tone, not to feel bad at who you are because of your skin tone. There's a very big difference there.
I want you to recognize.
Like on one hand, it's like, obviously white pride is a big no-no. You cannot, just no. Like, there are things, I'm a white person. I'm not like, yay, I'm white. It makes my life easier. I've never had to fear for my life from a cop.
Yeah. The worst I've ever had to fear from a cop.
I can say like, I'm proud to be Italian. I'm proud to, have my descendants be gypsies. I'm proud to be, authentically hillbilly, because my mom's family is Scots-Irish, and we live in the Appalachians, so I'm a hillbilly. I've never thought to myself, I'm so proud to be a white person, because what is that? That's not an identity. And it's a non-identity that's been co-opted by the worst people on the planet.
I think an important issue on, I guess you're, those who can trace their lineage in this country, who are African American, to slave time.
That is the big difference. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I keep interrupting, but that is a super good point.
All right. Here's where there's a problem. Like, where your average person of European descent can not only trace their lineage back to, say, a specific country or countries, they can trace it back to certain villages. Sometimes back to certain, like a house that their descendants came from hundreds of years ago. The lineage can be traced back, in some of these cases, all the way back to the medieval era, going back as far as back to triple digits, I guess, before we were in the 4-digit thing.
Like, you want to talk like British nobility? Yeah, they can trace themselves back to the 3 digits.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Some even further. your average.
But when you're a black person in this country, all that history was stolen from you. So it's okay to say, I'm a proud black person, because that's all there is. You can't say I'm a proud, I'm from Zimbabwe, I'm from Ghana, because the history was stolen from them. So that's another form of privilege that white people have, most of us at least.
Your average African American who traces their lineage back to whoever their ancestor is, brought in through the American chattel slave trade. Their lineage ends in large parts the moment that person got off of the boat. And large and on top of that, the culture that person brought them was slowly destroyed. Only fragments of it survive in modern day context. And basically, other tribes, other people, like enslaved Americans of various African tribes intermix with each other, and those cultures kind of intermix with each other. But the distinctness of that person that came over was lost. So a disconnection is there. I think that's always.
And that's a disconnection that white people can never understand.
No.
Especially those of us who know, what countries our family emigrated here from.
In the cultural and historical game of telephone, when it comes to ancestry, there's a very garbled message that, and I'm not saying that it's. I mean, in large ways, yes, I will say that it is a bad thing to not know of that particular heritage. Somebody that again, I don't know who my father is. So just in that little aspect, I from a sort of a cultural, and I think in terms of like extended family, beyond like my immediate family that I live with, I don't have that much of a real connection.
It gets worse though.
Yeah, my mother's
also adopted.
My mother's adopted on top of that, so I really. It's not the same. Let me put it this way. That's not the same.
No.
In any way. But on that small level, that micro level, I understand a little bit.
Yeah.
A small, tiny fraction. I can't understand on that giant institutional, cultural level. But if you, on that, like I said, on that level, they can't. Like somebody that doesn't know where, like, they don't know anything beyond, oh, I'm West African. That's a big, giant region with literally dozens of large cultures and hundreds, if not thousands, of individual tribes with individual cultural markers. Everything from cuisine to religion to
language sometimes.
Linguistics to
just regional customs
that are all lost the moment that person, that ancestor came off of the boat and was integrated into American chattel slave culture.
And that's part of the reason why, African Americans have had to work so hard to develop their own culture in this country, because they had everything stripped away from them.
Yeah, they had to do a combination.
They didn't have a choice. And so think about that the next time you as a white person is like, oh, gee, I wish I could. No, you do not.
And I find both
there's an interesting story. So I have this friend, Sean, at work, the library. Sean is biracial.
Mm-hmm.
And after the election, I made a joke about, we were talking about people threatening to leave the country after Trump got elected the second time. And I made a joke about, Dan and I could use I can't remember what it's called, it's the Latin term. but there's something where it's like if you can trace your lineage there and you still have like family there, like I still have third cousins in Calabria, and I was like, oh, Dan and I could technically move Dan and I to Italy and become citizens there, but if we're trying to run away from fascism, it would be a lateral move.
Yeah.
And it didn't even occur to me. Sean kind of looked at me and he was like, that would be nice, but I have no idea where that side of my family comes from. It didn't even occur to me. I was just kind of making a goofy joke. And it was like, I just got it like hit right in the face with, oh, fuck, what did I say? Like, just not even, it didn't even occur to me. So I'm glad that he kind of checked me on that very nicely. And it's like, I like to read a lot of African American authors, just because, not because they're African American authors, just because they're American authors, and their work is as valuable as anyone else, obviously. And a lot of stuff like I love Toni Morrison. I'm a huge Toni Morrison fan, and reading her stuff, it really puts you in the mind of what it's like, to live, to grow up, and try to survive going through everything that we've talked about going through. And it's like you cannot possibly really grasp it as a white person. And I think that we all need to show, the next time you think as a white person, I need to, oh, I wish I could be this, or I wish it could be, I wish I, could be cooler like this black kid, or I wish I could be like, I don't know, less white. Like, just be happy that you haven't had to suffer to get, your community has not had to suffer to get where it is in this country.
I find, like as I was saying, about to say earlier, the I find like I was saying earlier that the uh, American experience, like a perspective, is the depth of history in terms of like you're going to equate it to like linear measurements, but the uniqueness, one of the very uniquenesses of the African American, or the African in America experience is that their foundation was built on what echoes were left of their home culture. Various echoes from various national, I don't think to use the word national, but tribal and ethnic backgrounds, integrated with elements of, I would say, English, Scots Irish, and other European cultures that they grabbed onto and sort of wove and integrated this
The sort of new culture, new history.
This new thing out of it that had, again, like I said, echoes of various different African traditions, what they could salvage, what they could rescue, and integrated with
Existing framework. Existing religious framework.
Yeah. I find that fascinating. I find that unique to them because with other cultures like various subsects of European culture, your Italian Americans, your Irish Americans, um, Hispanic Americans, even natives. Despite our best efforts, especially with natives, we're able to salvage large portions of their home culture
And languages.
and still remain within the American tapestry to a certain degree, where the African American culture is unique unto itself because of the issues and markers that I discussed earlier.
Yeah, that was masterfully put. Okay, I have one funny story.
Right.
Another funny story. Okay, so on Twitter, there was a headline. It was about Toni Morrison, going back to Toni Morrison. So this was a few years ago before she died. She did, it was, I know there were a lot of people like doing DNA tests and stuff. I did a DNA test. And she found out that she had like a significant percentage of white ancestry. I can't remember exactly where from, but white. And some idiot on Twitter who does not understand history tried to make fun of her for it because he was like, oh, suggesting that, she wasn't, she wasn't black. And it's like, no, honey. Like, the reason why that percentage of white DNA is in there is not for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes people just do not understand history and they make themselves sound like such fucking idiots. So I thought that was funny. That was a hilariously dumb response. Anyway, all right. Anything else on Juneteenth?
I guess what you were touching on there just earlier. I guess Juneteenth also is an observance that it's just one particular instance that the American experience is not free. We tend to think of ourselves as separate from our in terms like separate from the European ancestry that we have, and certain institutions that we consider distasteful, to be kind. One of them being colonialism, and we have our own brand of colonialism. We just don't call it colonialism.
Very much so. We call it ensuring the freedom of brown people.
Well, I believe, but I believe there's a more popular term, and that's manifest destiny.
That works too. Yeah.
I believe American chattel slavery was one of our early spins on colonialism. I mean, we did it while we were a British colony, and it survived past the end of that colonization, and
yeah, and it also survived long past chattel slavery being legal in the country that colonized us.
Yes.
Like Britain and most of Europe got rid of chattel slavery like 100 years before we did. And much easier. They didn't require wars to do it.
Yeah, well, it happened.
I mean, it wasn't like an immediate, now it's done, but it happened gradually.
The Brits, all together, I believe it was in the 1830s. The French went back and forth depending on which regime was in charge.
Was it the 1830s? I thought it was like the 1770s.
The abolition movement began.
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
In the 1870s, 1880s. I believe they were with provisos to either 1833 or 1836. You also have most of like I want to say the big lone holdout was Portugal in terms of European countries. I mean, I guess you could also count the Ottoman Empire, being that they had still had dominions in Europe. But I mean, in terms of like your quote unquote Western Christian powers, I think Spain and especially Portugal were slow on the drop. Brazil still had slavery until the 1880s.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that gets to another misconception that again was perpetrated by various conservative factions that we were the leaders and the abolition of slavery. And it was like, and also like this also extends to especially your lost cause myth people. And people will say, well, look at all the white people that died to free black slaves. I hear this argument a lot. And it falls apart with it, well,
who was it that enslaved them?
Yeah, about that. And it was mostly poor white people. Again, a large contingency of poor black people that died. It was basically the Civil War was a war where a term, a rich man's war, poor man's
Poor man's
fight.
fight.
And it doesn't extend. It extends both to the fiscal rich and poor and the cultural rich and poor. It's like your quote unquote thought leaders were waging this war, but your poor folk,
Yeah.
often your poor uneducated folk,
In the South,
were the ones that are.
people could, if they had a certain number of slaves or a certain amount of money, they could either send the slaves to fight in place of the members of the family or pay to get the members of the family out. I think it varied state by state, but so, I mean, it was literally like people were forced to fight whether they wanted to or not, unless you were rich enough to buy your way out. But
There was a recent movie that came out that was fairly accurate of that phenomenon.
yeah, that's right.
It was
What was that?
God, it was United States. It was basically based on a guy named Knight in Mississippi. It was played by Matthew McConaughey. I keep want to say Jonestown, but that's not right. But
The Free State of Jones.
Free State of Jones.
That's right. That's what
which, yes, a lot of places is very dry. It's fairly accurate. I think basically your big
I
problem.
haven't seen it, but I've seen
Interesting. Your big problem with it is like your most historical movies is like time compression and sort of blending of elements together, different events together,
and sometimes people
together. Yeah. But all in all, it was a great description of what was going on there in terms of like right after passing of the 13th, right in between the end of the Civil War and passing of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Because what happened down there and other places too, but Mississippi was among the most notorious, is they would immediately pass laws that would return newly freed black people to a state that was one step removed from slavery. It was basically slavery in everything but name. Mm-hmm. It also dealt with the uprisings in Mississippi because again you had things like if you could come up with something like $300 or something like that, you can get yourself out of having to serve. Again, it was poor white people found out they had more in common with black people than they did with rich white people.
Which is something
or
that
rich people in general
true in this country.
Yeah.
Regardless of race, gender, identity, or sexual orientation, we poors have more in common with each other than the rich folk do.
Yeah. All right.
But
we now.
All right. So that was we talked a lot more about that than I expected, but it was a good discussion.
It's a large issue, and it's
we're white people, and we come at this from like history and sociology and psychology and anthropology.
We are not the greatest experts in the world. We are doing our own very amateurish research.
We didn't even do really research. I wrote down a couple of dates and stuff. The rest of this is just.
Please feel free to do your own research. Please go and go to more reliable sources than us. Yeah. This is merely our own perspective of it based on the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, and we just wanted to kind of do something to highlight that, despite what the current administration says, it's still an important day. And, we should be treated like such. So, but anyway, I also wanted to talk about, since it's still Pride Month, I wanted to talk about some hot button Pride issues.
Probably one of the biggest. The biggest one when it comes to the current administration and the current cultural climate of the social conservative movement. When it comes to, especially to trans folks in general, and that is of trans women in sports.
Trans athletes in general, but specifically trans women in sports.
I tend to think it's more towards trans women.
Oh, no. It's definitely, the focus is on the trans women in sports because they're taking away opportunities from other women because they're just loser men who can't
They can't
do
win
well
in
in their own gender, so they have to pretend to be another gender, blah, blah,
like
blah.
they watched Soul Man or Joanna Man
Yeah.
or Lady Ballers and thought it was a documentary.
Yeah, no. So the focus is definitely on trans women athletes, but there are trans men athletes competing, which is, a man who was assigned female at birth who is now, presenting as a man who has had hormone treatments as a man. In fact, there are. Oh, at the last Olympics, a trans man won a gold medal. There was a cis woman. No, nobody brought it up. There was a cis woman who looked too mannish for the transvestigators out there, and they started a whole online rumor campaign that
Could I
she was. Yes, please.
I feel transvestigators is should be a Grant Morrison project for Vertigo Comics. Just all right, all right.
That's got a good point. What was her name? Amani Khalif.
Yeah.
Was an Algerian boxer, a woman, biologically, chromosomally, it was on her birth certificate. Because she didn't look right, the transvestigator started this whole big thing about how she was born a man and she was beating up on women because she was abusive, which is usually how it goes for trans men, because apparently all men have to pretend to be, in their minds, all men who want to abuse women have to pretend to be women in order to gain spaces with the women in order to abuse them, completely ignoring the fact that cis men abuse cis and trans women in this country as themselves every single day and get away with it almost every time.
They hate the notion of, these are people that pretty much hate the notion of femininity in general, let alone impersonating aspects of femininity to gain ground into to spaces to quote unquote inflict harm and damage upon women, upon cis women. Like that would they basically would, if you go to the average psychological profile of people who actually commit these kind of acts, they're more than likely just going to barge in there as themselves, commit what kind of act they're going to do, and leave.
Yeah, men don't need to pretend to be anything except who they are in order to get away with abusing women. No. It's just a thing. It happens every day in this country.
As like
men get away with doing this shit. It's happening less now than it used to, thankfully, but it's just, it's complete bullshit. Anybody who knows, anybody who knows trans women knows that literally they just have to take a piss. Just let them take a fucking piss. Oh my God.
Like first of all, in a woman's bathroom, again, I'm just from the pure logistics. And the pure logistics of this is there are no urinals. There are cut off
stalls.
They're cut off segregated stalls with makeshift walls in between them.
Granted, those walls have big gaps in them.
Yeah.
But
still, you're going to go in, you're going to do your business, you're going to wash your hands.
Let me explain to you what happens in the women's restroom. Because I am a trans person. I am an agender person, but I am assigned female at birth. So I've been using women's restrooms my entire life. Except for that one time in 5th grade where I tried to use the bathroom on the wrong floor of my elementary school and didn't realize that the bathrooms had been switched from where they were on the floor that I was on. And I wandered into the boys' bathroom and wondered why there were a bunch of flower pots stuck to the walls. Other than that, it's only been the women's room.
It's a hydroponic garden. We love those things.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know now, women, that's what they are.
Yep. So, let me tell you what happens. I've literally, sometimes women go to the bathroom together in groups, and sometimes they talk and they joke, and sometimes they go by themselves, and they go in and
Maybe do some
they
cocaine.
go in their stall and they do their business, and they come out, and you might, have a friendly nod because, they're in there dropping waste just like you are. And so you don't want to talk about it. And then, wash your hands and dry their hands and maybe make a joke about how they have to switch to hand dryers and they're a pain in the ass instead of using paper towels like any normal person. And then you leave. There you go. Some women go in and they put on makeup or they fix their hair.
I personally like those Dyson Airblades myself.
I don't like them. Because I just give me some fucking paper towels, man.
I like it because it feels like a massage for my lower arms.
I can see that.
It's like an air massage. Oh, that feels great.
Like, and I guarantee that you have also used the restroom hundreds of times with trans women and have never thought twice about it. So a few years ago, there was, I think it was the first time that Trump was in power, there was a whole big thing about bathroom bans for trans people. You had to use the bathroom which matched the sex on your birth certificate. Problem was that, when you're a trans person and you're on hormones, hormone replacement therapy or HRT, and, you've had top surgery and you've had bottom surgery, your outward gender appearance and also your genitalia no longer looks like the gender that it appeared on your birth certificate. So now you do have men walking into women's restrooms because they have no choice in the matter. And you have women walking into men's bathrooms because, again, you have no choice in the matter. It makes no fucking sense. It did not help solve any problems of women being assaulted because, statistically speaking, trans women get assaulted far more regularly than cis women. That data is available on the internet. It has been far more, far higher numbers for trans women than it has for cis women for like decades now. Okay, you can go look at it. It's out there. So this is still going on in the background, and now in this version of the Trump presidency, he not only on his first day did he declare via executive order that all trans people cease to exist as who they are.
Everyone is now PPs and
like they're legally speaking no more trans people in the country, or intersex people, non-binary people, agender people, or anybody else who is not along the lines of a strict gender binary.
You're either a PP or
your biological sex at birth. But he also is now going after trans athletes. About a month ago, there were 50 times more kids with measles in Texas than there were trans athletes who were in Texas. 50 times. There were like 10 trans athletes, trans boys and trans girls, who wanted to play sports in schools. They didn't do anything about the measles, because that's a whole other kerfuffle that we might talk about at some point. But they sure as fuck started passing bills eliminating the ability for trans kids to play sports on the gender that matched their, or on the team that matched their correct gender. We'll put it that way. All right, so I wrote some stuff down. There have been some, 2.3 million trans people in the United States, adult trans people. That is 1.2%, 1 to 2% of the adult population of adults in the United States of America. Not very many of them play sports. So 3 trans women currently hold titles internationally. One is in bowling. That's not a sport as I see it. And one trans man won gold at the Paris Olympics. All right. So I did a bunch of research on this.
Wasn't
Specifically, I'm sorry, go ahead.
wasn't one of them like I was watching John Oliver's thing on it? There's one of them was like darts or something like that. Some
Bowling.
yeah, it was bowling. There was a bunch of records on bowling. It's like,
Yeah.
you want to show me the facts and figures on where like men more are like cis men have a distinct advantage beyond women. It's like
They're even going after chess now. Apparently,
yeah,
there are trans women playing in female chess tournaments, and they're getting flack because apparently they think that men can have a better advantage at chess than women do.
because
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's just bullshit.
did you not see the Queen's Gambit?
Actually, I never watched that.
Okay.
Okay, so their biological males have physical advantages over biological females. Biological females have certain advantages over biological males. There are different in respiration, muscle density, running speed, all sorts of different factors. Some the biological males are better than biological females, and some biological females are better than biological males. The reason why sports became segregated in the first place is because you have all these men's teams, and then women decided they wanted to play sports too, and the men got pissed off because the women were beating them at the things that they were supposed to be better at women at.
I think on top of that, there's leftover aspects of this outdated sense of chivalry and sort of Victorian norms that kind of
Most definitely. I feel like that has to go into it. Like, yeah, that is definitely a part of it that we haven't quite shaken off. And, being that we're, as you've probably noticed, big pro wrestling fans, I think that is something that's very slowly changing, but it is definitely changing in certain, AEW definitely. But anyway, women kept beating men. Men didn't like it. They either forced women out entirely, or after a while, they forced women to, and we're talking like 20s to the 50s here, to the 60s, forced women to start their own, their own teams, their own women's sports. Okay. This kind of just jumps around a little bit. Women have varying levels of testosterone in their bodies, naturally occurring. But cis women athletes do not get tested for testosterone levels. So there is this argument that trans women have higher levels of testosterone, therefore they do better at sports, all physical activities, than cis women do, because cis women have lower levels of testosterone. But almost all trans professional athletes, trans women professional athletes, have been on 1 year or more of hormone replacement therapy. And generally, most trans women, because of that, have lower levels of testosterone, far lower levels than many cis women do. The thing is that cis women are not put in categories based on their testosterone levels. It's an across-the-board thing. So cis women with high testosterone levels go up against cis women with low testosterone levels all the time. Nobody makes a peep about it. Nobody even notices. If you really want to be honest about all of this, maybe instead of deciding that trans women who have these very low levels of testosterone shouldn't be competing against cis women who have naturally high occurring levels of testosterone, because it's not fair for the trans women, quite frankly. But the thing is that testosterone does not necessarily equal, physical superiority in any regard. It's just a hormone. It's incorrect to just what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a fallacy pushed by people who really don't understand the complexities of biology, that somehow testosterone equals physical sportsmanship superiority. It's not true at all. It's just one factor that can, in certain sports, have an impact, but not necessarily.
I think people, especially from my exit from the quote unquote conservative circles, I would put that to probably legit. Um, they're under the misconception that the XXXY chromosomes are that's it. That's the
Yeah,
that's
the
that.
XX or XY, and that's it. And there's nothing that deviates beyond
And
that.
it all determines everything. And while I will not understate that that's an important factor. It is called a primary sex factor. It's not the only one at play. There are something over 20 different chromosomal markers that determine certain sex characteristics.
Yeah.
Some of them involving brain chemistry. And again, I've said this in the past. If one of those markers is turned on or turned off, where in the usual presentation is supposed to be in the other state, what does that mean? Does we don't know enough about it right now to do certain things conclusively, but we know enough, especially from the XXXY chromosome, we have intersex presentations, various intersex different non-binary presentations.
There are chromosomal anomalies that make someone chromosomally a male, but they are female presenting. They have female primary and secondary sex characteristics, and the same goes with someone being chromosomally female but having male characteristics. There are people who are born with both. There are people who are born with neither. There are people born with unusual genetic markers that make them, male in some areas and female in others. It basically, the people who are just saying it's all XX or XY and nothing in between, they're relying on like elementary school basic bitch biology,
like fifth graders.
And the study of chromosomes. There have been plenty of scientists and doctors who specialize in, I can't remember what the word is, the study of chromosomes, who have come out and said that is not true in the slightest. Like Dan said, there are, hundreds, thousands of variations, across humanity that determine, this kind of thing. So
I think it does a disservice to chromosomal and
DNA
research because
absolutely, because you're just saying nope, that doesn't matter.
If you think it's that simple, look at how long it took researchers from the discovery of DNA in the 1960s to us actually having the technology and doing enough of the research and the data collection to map the human genome. That's 50, 60, 70 years worth of time and research between thousands of different scientists and an array of technological and computer apparatus to make that happen. That does not indicate that the human genome and DNA information is a simple thing like XXXY. And again, I think it breaks it down because on your basic human level, look, that guy Wolfman's got nards. He's a male Wolfman, and the basic stuff that
Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah, that's the argument of the right.
It feels like it. It feels like it's that stupid.
Wolfman's got nards.
And the thing was that national sporting bodies, international sporting bodies, for a long time did do chromosomal testing and stopped because it turned out that a lot of high-level athletes did not have the chromosomal makeup that they thought they did to be like a cis woman or a cis man. And it started causing a lot of problems, which is why they stopped doing it. Things like the International Olympic Committee and stuff like that decided to ban chromosomal testing because it was causing issues, because there are so many different like variations that, people are like, I'm chromosomally male. How the fuck did that happen? It was fucking with me. It's a big deal.
It's many ways. Think of it as a combination law, because like the more factors into it, the more combinations you can come up with.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
I also like one of my arguments. Like, that's my biological argument for in favor of trans people, in favor of in favor of trans people existing. It's like, well, I'm sure thank you for your approval. It's like,
Yeah.
they don't need my approval, but I'm more than happy to give it. The other,
We just woke up all of our cats.
yeah, the other argument is sociological. Is the idea that, and it falls back to the biological. So it.
Well, let me finish talking about the biological, because I have a few things, and then we can talk about. All right. So the British Journal of Sports Medicine did testing during the 2011 to 2013. Between 2011 and 2013, the International Association of Athletics Federation World Championships. This is over 3 years at this specific championship event. They conducted. They concluded the type of athletic event did not influence testosterone concentrations. Men in all throwing events showed significant lower testosterone than men in other events. So even in cis men, this is present, that testosterone does not necessarily have anything to do with, these were track and field events. That's what it was. So men in running events, I didn't write that down, but in throwing events, they had significantly lower testosterone, which is unusual because you would think like guys in throwing events, if you've ever seen like a shot putter, discus thrower, they're the biggest guys in the track team. They are very big. They are very muscular. They actually have been shown to do better in events when they have lower testosterone. It's unusual. Female trans women had a competitive advantage only in the 400-meter race, the 400-meter hurdles, 800-meter race, the hammer throw, and the pole vault. In all other events, they, is that female trans or female with women with high testosterone? I think it's women with high testosterone, cis women with high testosterone, only had advantages in those, 5 events specifically, and not in literally every other track and field event that was out there. So there are, like I said at the beginning, testosterone can have effects on certain things. High testosterone and low testosterone can have effects on dominance in certain athletic events, high or low. It's actually very unusual. Okay, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, October of last year, 2024, conducted. There was a very long-term study that they had been doing of trans athletes. The performance of cis athletes versus trans athletes. The results of the study suggest that while more research should be done, they caution against bans and exclusions based on incorrect and incomplete research. Basically, they did a 10-year study that had no real scientific results. And basically what that means there's a certain threshold percentage-wise that they did of all of the their participants that they did not reach. So it was a 10-year study, and even that was inconclusive that trans athletes had some kind of an advantage. Also, it found that trans women have a very similar bone density to cis women, which is not surprising, considering that trans women also have very similar brain scans to cis women. And that pretty much 98 to 99% of all doctors and scientists in the United States, if not the world, I don't know what the numbers are worldwide, but probably slightly better than the United States, also say that, there is no real physiological, physical, mental difference between cis women and trans women, except that cis women do not understand what it's like to live your life as a person of the opposite gender. So basically, biologically speaking, that's a lot of information saying that, you know, banning trans girls from competing with cis girls in high school is bullshit. Banning trans women from competing against cis women at the elite level of sports is also bullshit.
I think it also is very compelling information to the argument that Riley Gaines is a cunt.
Yes. Fuck you, Riley Gaines. Okay, so Riley Gaines came tied 5th with a trans woman, and the committee decided that they were going to give the trans woman 5th place, and she was going to share 5th place, but technically be in 6th place.
And the pictures.
The first 4 places were cis women. Okay, the trans woman tied for 5th place with a cis woman. 5th fucking place. Granted, it's better than anything I could do, but you know, the thing is that people are like, oh, well, trans women are, you know, taking all of the trophies away from cis women, even though almost no trans women in the elite sports world have trophies, have medals, have, you know, have records even. Like, if this were true across the board, literally every women's sport would have a trans woman, you know, as a record holder in it. And there are almost none.
I find the irony, one of the great irony, I sit there and think about it. The whole Riley Gaines argument is basically boomers defending somebody who didn't get a participation trophy.
Didn't get the participation trophy that she thought she deserved.
Yeah, I didn't get my 5th place trophy. They gave it to the trans person, and the trans person got all the photo opportunities that she did. Like, I'm like, you know, it's like I'm supposed to, like, you're in 5th place. Did you really think you were going to get that much attention for being in 5th place?
She sure
in one swimming competition.
Yeah, she sure as fuck got a lot of attention for throwing the person that she tied with, who just happened to be trans, under the bus.
Yeah.
With a whole contingent of really terrible people who have made it their life mission to harass and destroy the lives of a very small group of marginalized people.
And they're based, and
that sure as fuck got her
attention. Her whole argument and several other quote unquote cis turf athletes of that age.
Let's talk about the fencer. A few months ago, this was also an elite level sporting event. I don't remember what it was, but there was a fencer, a young woman. I think she's in her 20s. I can't remember her name because who the fuck cares? I don't want to give her any more, you know, attention that she's getting. So she refused to fence a trans woman in the finals, semifinals. And she was disqualified for it. So, of course, she's making the rounds to all of the right-wing media. Oh, boo-hoo, feel sorry for me because I was discriminated against because I refused to
for my conservative Christian
values. Person. Here's the thing, though. The trans fencer didn't win any titles either. They lost to cis women, unsurprisingly. Also, in fencing, it is actually very common for there to be intergender fencing, even at elite levels. And in fact, this person who got disqualified, this woman, had fenced against cis men earlier in the competition, earlier that day, I even think. And so literally there was no reason for her to do this except she just A, hates the trans people, and B, thought she could get a good deal, get some money and some attention out of screwing up this competition for herself. And it worked. She got a lot of money. She got a lot of attention.
I think this is kind of like, I wanted to pivot that my first argument towards trans rights, just trans existence in general, was biological. The sociological to me, and it overlaps with the biological, is the idea that, okay, if you believe that everything focuses on, like, the entire, there's only a binary, there are only men and women, there's nothing else, and basically what's in between your legs is the entire determinant of whether you are male, female, and there's nothing else, then every rite of passage that is, I would say, what made upon gender is complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
and also, like, decades and decades of feminists who fought so that they should be more than, to prove that, yes, being a woman is supposed to be more than what's between your legs and whether you can bear children. It's literally just shitting on generations of work that they did, which in itself can be incredibly flawed and lacking in intersectionality. But, women used to be sold off in marriage as chattel. And it's entirely too easy to say the only thing that makes you a woman, the only thing that makes you important as a woman, not a very long line of logic there, is what's between your legs. It's not too far afield from the only reason you're important as a human being is that you can produce sons. Mm-hmm. It's very much along that line of thinking. And that's pretty fucking uncomfortable. Because how many humans fought for so long to be, I am a person. I am not the sum of my parts. I am not the color of my skin. I am not, my secondary sex organs. I am not the fact that I have a uterus, or not. It's supposed to be, being a person is supposed to be more than that. And it's like, you have people out here who are like, women have uteruses, women can give birth, women are this, women are that. And it's like, you have women who have gone through menopause. Does that make them less women? You have women who have had to have hysterectomies. Does that make them no longer women? You've had women who can't have children, biologically speaking. Does that make them not women?
According to societies of the past, yes, it does.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be better than those people.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be more enlightened. We're supposed to have come so far sociologically that we can see people for something other than this rudimentary just pieces of things, we're supposed to be able to, and it extends into race. Most definitely it extends into ableism, because you start looking at, like, okay, so if a man doesn't have a penis and he can't get erections, that makes him not a man.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about a soldier who, jumped on a landmine to save his unit and now, has his legs blown off, has, no ability to have, sexual feeling whatsoever? Does that make him not a man now? We're supposed to be more than the sum of our parts and our genitalia, the way our genitalia is shaped. That's what we've been working to as a society all this time, that we are people first, and gender markers, secondary sex characteristics, certain shapes of genitalia, dead last. And to have this all, because trans people want equal rights, to have us just regress decades and decades and multiple generations back, it's pretty disgusting. And not only is it dangerous for trans people, it's dangerous for cis people too. There are cis women in the United States. Actually, it happened a few weeks ago. There was a lesbian woman who tried to use a women's bathroom, and a group of men went into the women's bathroom to confront her, and they beat the hell out of her and put her in the hospital. Cis women are not safe when trans women are not safe. That's all there is to it.
I like to add that it's not just about. If you think it's just about trans people and the narrative that it's protecting women's rights, protecting women's freedom and safety, you've got it dead wrong. It's always about control. It's about
Yes.
and that control comes in the reinforcement of
Of
gender
traditional gender norms.
yeah, traditional gender norms.
Because it's not about, I think that you're a trans woman. It's you don't fit my definition, my version of womanhood, and you have to be punished just in case.
Or manhood
Or manhood, exactly. I think that you should tell them about your experiences in men's bathrooms.
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
think you should be open about that.
Sure, no, I got no problem. But I guess I from a young age, like, I don't like public bathrooms. Like, and it comes from like going all the way back to Catholic school. I think where if I had to go use the bathroom, like there would always, not always, but in a lot of situations. This is like first or fourth grade. There would be like your my Catholic school is broken up with from K to 8. So kindergarten through 8th grade. And your kindergarten through 4th grade was on one floor, and then the 5th through 8th grade was on the bottom floor. And sometimes those kids would come upstairs from the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to use the 1st and 4th grade bathrooms. And you would go there, and they would be hanging out in there, and you'd go in the stall, and they would pop their head on over, and like stare down at you, like, "What's going on in there?" Like, "Yeah, you need any help?" Like, basically, just pretty traumatizing things.
Harassment?
Harassing and traumatizing things to like your first, second grade kid that just wants to use the bathroom in peace and go back.
And statistically speaking, abuse numbers bear that out. Men are always like, if I have to go in the women's restroom to stop a predator, I will. But it's like, bitch, you're the predator. Okay. Statistically speaking, girls are safer in bathrooms than young boys are. Young boys get abused more regularly by cis men in men's rooms more than by trans women or cis women in women's bathrooms.
And I'm going to say this here: that didn't stop with elementary school. This goes all the way to like adulthood. Like I'll say this: do you want to know how many times I was made to feel uncomfortable in a quote unquote men's bathroom by a trans person? It's 0. You want to know how many times I was made to feel uncomfortable by a cis man in a men's bathroom? Too many times to count. Like I can regale you with many different incidents. Everything from walking in and finding some guy drunk and passed out on a toilet seat, and then or to people like like, "Hey, come on in there," like banging on the door, or people that look at me just unusually where I'm coming home from a convention or a show at 9, 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have to use a public restroom. I can tell you many cis men that have made me feel uncomfortable in a men's bathroom. Trans people, never. I can't think of it.
That bears out for me too.
Yeah.
Like, I never felt uncomfortable in a women's room by trans women or cis women. Today, in the past couple of years, I still have never been made to feel uncomfortable in a women's room by a trans woman. In fact, I wear "I'll go with you" pins. Sometimes I think I've misplaced most of them. I got to get some more, but "I'll go with you" was actually during the first round of bathroom bans. It was an online group that made pins basically saying, like, if you are a trans woman and you are uncomfortable going to the bathroom by yourself because you think you'll be harassed, find someone with this pin. They will go with you and watch your back and, help diffuse anything that happens. And fortunately, no one ever took me up on the offer. But in the past few years, so I'm assigned female at birth. I have giant fucking double D tits that even when I wear very tight sports bras and binders, you can still tell that I have large tits. Okay. You can't hide them. Even with my giant tits, the fact that I dress, in as I'm not big on femininity, but it's obvious that I am biologically female. I'll put it that way. And even under those parameters, I have started to feel made to be uncomfortable by cis women in women's bathrooms, especially older cis women. They stare at me like, are you really supposed to be in here? Like, they're going to start some shit or say something to me. Now, they never do because I'm a lot bigger than them. And I've gotten pretty good at staring them down.
You're like, bitch, give me your lunch money.
Yeah. No, that but I have definitely, and it's like I'm also autistic, so I'm not always good at picking up on nonverbal things. That's how obvious and how damning this is. I've gotten pretty good at just staring them down, and they usually just kind of look at me and they kind of just shuffle out of the bathroom. But it's definitely something that's gotten worse in the past few years.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a bunch of trans women. They're lovely people. The reality is that trans women get murdered, abused, put through,
harassed,
humiliated at an unbelievably high number. And now there are cis women who are going through all of that because they don't look feminine enough. They don't present feminine enough. Yeah, it's scary. Like, I never used to be afraid to go to the bathroom. I was at State College Pride by myself, not a couple of weekends ago. It was the 7th, I think. The weekend of the 7th. And I realized I was going to be there by myself. And State College it's the main campus of the Pennsylvania State University. It's like 45 minutes from us.
And it's a fairly...
it's pretty progressive town.
It's progressive town, and especially progressive college.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. And even last year when we went, there was a little bit of community pushback. There were people in pickup trucks driving around filming us when we were trying to eat, because it was pretty obvious we were there for Pride. And this year I was by myself, and I was like stressed out about eating because I was like, I'm obviously female presenting. I talked about the boobs. I can't hide them. So I can't use a men's room. I don't want to either because they seem really gross, and I don't want to deal with that.
They are gross.
Most men are really disgusting.
They are disgusting.
It's like, if I try to use the women's room when I'm in my drag persona, which you'll all see next week because we're going to be talking about drag queens. If I'm in my drag persona, is some jackass going to think that I'm a man trying to use the women's room and come after me? Now, I know how to fight. I'm rusty and out of shape, but I know how to fight. I can throw a haymaker that'll plant you on your ass. And I have a knife on me at all times, especially when I was out there by myself. So I'm not worried about... I'm also, I'm not a small person. And I'm wearing, 4-inch stilettos. So I'm up... And I have a giant wig on. So I'm, 6'3", with the wig and the heels. Probably, yeah.
It's one of those... if you get attacked by a bear, just form yourself into a bacon posing shape.
No, that's more mountain lions.
Yeah, mountain lion.
Some bears around here. But so I'm like, I'm intimidating. I'm not small, and I'm even like, what am I gonna do if I have to use the bathroom? Do they have single sex bathrooms somewhere? Can I use them? Is somebody gonna come after me? Thankfully I didn't have to go to the bathroom. But I was actually stressing out about it. It's like, I can take care of myself, but I don't fucking want to. I don't want to get into a fist fight with some jackass. I don't want to have to defend myself. I'm at Pride. We're supposed to be having fun, and it's not going to take much for some triggered conservative asshole, even in a place like State College, to come out and start giving me a hard time.
I think with the events of the last weekend with the guy going around and killing members.
Oh my God, we didn't mention that with the No Kings rally.
Yeah.
The Minnesota lawmakers, that early that morning there was a guy who was dressed as a cop who had a list of Democratic lawmakers, and he started locally with state Congress people and shooting at them, and one couple got killed. The other couple is still in the hospital. They're going to be okay, despite the fact that between them they got shot 17 times. He had an itinerary of Democratic lawmakers who he was planning on hunting down. And, when this is also like the last anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting before they're going to rip the building down, a couple of weeks ago. Trans women of color get murdered in huge numbers in this country all the time. It's actually staggering when you look up the numbers. And, men like this, like the guy that shot these 4 people and murdered 2 of them, they're out there killing trans women and getting away with it because somehow it's acceptable to murder trans people in our world. It's not, but there's no one to speak up. We have to speak up for each other.
There's also, within the conservative circles, there's either a direct or indirect normalization of these kind of actions.
In fact, legally speaking, for a long time in America, there was a trans panic defense that if you shot a trans woman to death, you could get off because you were sexually attracted to her and didn't know that she was trans. Many people have gotten off on this defense and used it legally successfully in certain states.
It feels very akin to the Harvey Milk murders, where the guy claimed stress and ate too many Twinkies and managed to get himself off for that. I mean, also the idea, like, it would have been unthinkable only 10 years ago that a sitting president may pardon this person before.
No. Oh, I just found out today. Trump can't pardon him. Yeah. They're arresting him by the state, not federally.
Okay, so yeah.
So Trump is not going to be able to pardon this guy. I guarantee you he would have otherwise. Yeah. Of course he would have. But anyway, getting back to trans people. Getting back to trans people, we're kind of on the subject here. So it's like, I don't even know where the hell we were. We were talking about bathrooms, about how stressful it is to use the bathroom.
It started with transports, but I think transports seems to be one aspect
of it. It's like, this is like the hot button issue now. It's like the trans women, the men are just parading around as women and trying to, invade women's spaces. Yeah, all of this is
and steal the virtues of our wives and daughters, our Swiss women wives and daughters.
Yeah,
which is completely and utterly untrue. If anything, like, I feel like most Swiss women should ally with, like, I don't get the whole turf thing where it's like they're coming in and they're taking, or they're like, here's one more ally. Like, you need all the allies you can get.
Basically, the turf argument is that it's men pretending to be women that cannot possibly understand the struggles of women. But being that trans women are women who just got born into the wrong body, not only do they understand the struggles of being a woman. They understand the struggles of being trans on top of it. Very similar struggles, but one, the being a trans person is actually more of a struggle than being a woman. It's like, but instead of looking at it like, yes, this person is like, understands what it's like to be a woman, understands the struggles that I've gone through, but has this extra layer of difficulty because it took them physically transitioning in order to be seen as the person they are, instead of like using that, this understanding, this extra understanding they have of the world. They say, no, you're pretending. They literally think that trans women are pretending to be women, to denigrate their suffering, their, everything that they've gone through as a woman.
In certain ways, it feels akin to the turf argument. It has a certain kinship with straight couples that were arguing against gay marriage.
Yeah, that gay marriage would make their straight marriage less legitimate. It very much is like that, and there are arguments that have ties into like racial disparities. Before this, it's like there are ties into racial arguments, anti-Semitism, ableism, homosexuality at different periods in history. It's like the bigotry never changes, just the targets do.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's always trying to find an other, and right now,
exactly.
Along with immigrant population, trans people are the new, the current hot other.
Yeah.
That
Granted, we're kind of losing that stance to Latino and Latina people whose communities are being decimated. People who are here legally are, facing having their legal status ripped away from them for no reason. They're being rounded up and beaten up by ICE, which itself is a criminal organization. And the thing is, it's like so many groups of people have gone through that in their histories in the United States. So it's like what we said earlier about, how, we're divided by rich and poor. A person who is like an African American person or an Asian American person or a white person, if we're all poor, we have way more in common than like a white person has with a white person who's a billionaire. I have more in common with my neighbors across the street or across the yard who are a biracial couple in the same tax bracket as I am than I do with Elon Musk, who's a white guy.
Or even like those under your quote unquote demographic of rainbow capitalism, those who have gotten up there. I feel
like Caitlyn Jenner is a good example.
Yeah.
Like I have more in common with a cis woman than I do with Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
Mostly because Caitlyn Jenner is rich and terrible.
Yeah. Not saying that there are people that are there are good people that are wealthy, but again, it turns from a class consciousness type of standpoint. Money and wealth, money in particular, money in general, and wealth in particular, affords somebody of that class a greater amount of privilege
and
protection
in whatever minority group they happen to fall in.
Yes, and often to cross section that with say those who argue things towards the American dream and meritocracy, it gives us like, well, those people made it. Why are all these other people not doing the same thing? Ignoring that. Sometimes you just
Sometimes that's not lucky.
Ignoring the fact that that's not the norm. If you take everybody that does
meritocracy is people who are lucky enough to get to that point by having things in their life line up.
It's not
a moral failing to be poor.
I'm not trying to discredit discipline and hard work.
Oh, absolutely.
I find them admirable attributes, but in the long spread of things, like there's a reason that we find American dream stories so interesting is because they don't happen as often. If it had happened to everybody, it's such a compelling story. It would just be one of those.
Like,
Yeah, no, I would think it would be one of those instructional videos you get seen shown in like your workplace, like workplace instructional videos, more like unintentionally humorous at best and boring at worst.
but so it's like I don't think you can really take out the the trans sports debate outside of the larger debate of trans people are trans women are women and trans men are men and they deserve dignity, and you can't take it out of this minority group versus this non-minority group. You can't like I said, all of these arguments have ties to different generations of bigotry in American history. And, it's just, this is just the newest one. I'll let you in on what the trans agenda is. It's to discover who you really are and live your life as happily as you can as that person. There you go. That's the trans agenda. That and to be able to safely take a shit in public bathrooms. Yeah. Okay?
Maybe your happiness is engaging in a sport. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I never played sports when I was a kid, but my siblings did, and as I understand it, for normal children, it's an important thing to learn discipline, hard work, teamwork, socialization, and trans kids should not be removed from that just because they honestly were lucky enough to have the self-awareness to realize that they're trans at an early age. Good for them. That should be celebrated, And more than that, like, we shouldn't be a society where, it takes you 40 years to realize who you are. Where, if you can say, well, I think I might be this, and then a few years later you go, no, I was wrong. I'm definitely this instead. We should have the freedom to let people, explore themselves.
Sometimes it does take 40 or 50 years, but there shouldn't be unnecessary obstructions to that.
Definitely.
To that path of self-discovery.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes self-discovery is being wrong about who you are for a period of time. You might think you're trans and be like, no, I made a mistake. I'm actually a cis person. And that's fine. Those people are called detransitioners, and most of them are, a very, very small number who are like, yeah, I'm fine with this. Some of them, much like, Candace Owens, like in our earlier example, will sell out their entire community for attention.
Candace Owens isn't.
No, she's black.
Oh, okay.
She sold out her entire community for attention and money.
Yes. I mean, there are detransitioners that have an extreme amount of regret that translate that into some form. I hesitate to use the word self-hatred, but I mean projected self-hatred, I guess.
That's definitely, yeah.
And
they definitely have issues. Like, it's very much like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, where he thought he was a trans person and he kind of hated himself for it, but he wasn't actually a trans person. He was just fucking psychotic.
Yeah.
And nothing would really make him happy. And thankfully, nobody operated on him because they realized that he was not trans, just massively fucked up.
Yeah.
And, it's like him becoming a trans woman wouldn't have made him happy. What makes him happy is being not himself. That's what he was trying to become.
And some of these people tend to hook up with like your PragerU.
Yeah, and like I should preface that by saying that for a long time, the trans community has thought very badly of the movie Silence of the Lambs because of the tie-in with Buffalo Bill's partner before he murdered him, being a trans person, and him thinking that he's a trans person. Buffalo Bill is not a trans person, and I'm not saying the trans community in any way has anything to do with psycho serial killers from amateurishly written books. Okay, I enjoyed it, but it's amateurishly written. I'm sorry. The dialogue is terrible. Anyway, sorry. I need to preface that because that's not what I'm saying. I'm not in any way comparing the trans community to Buffalo Bill.
No.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And not even all detransitioners. Again, there's a very small percentage.
It's a small percentage of a small percentage.
Yeah, that
Even
detransition, and then detransition at a point, and the most of the ones that do that wind up gravitating towards your conservative circles.
There's like 4 or 5.
Yeah, and it's
that
mostly,
are like conservative pundit detransitioners.
And it's mostly because they went to a certain point that late in the transition stage. And again, there are certain, again, it's not. It usually does not happen. Usually, a large amount of years of therapy, years of
yeah. It's like you can't just wake up one day and be like, I feel like having my dick chopped off today,
despite what Jeffrey tells you.
Yeah, doctors will not do that. It's like there are steps that you have to go through in order to do this, including living as your accurate gender for a number of years, going through hormone replacement therapy before you even have surgery. It's
there are hurdles upon hurdles to get through.
Yes,
to get to that point.
So anybody who says, trans people just one day they wake up and they just, oh, I'm just going to have the surgery.
Let me go to the drive-through and get my junk chopped off.
Nobody does that.
It's for those rare people that get to that point, and they go through the surgical process, and then they find out that it doesn't help them.
Oh my god, it's heartbreaking. It's so sad. It's like I can't even imagine.
But it is so rare.
It is incredibly rare.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel awful that you thought that this would help fulfill you and it didn't, and you had to go to these lengths to realize that. That's awful. Like if you ask any trans person about this, I'm sure they would say the same thing, because it's like, we want people to be free to be who they are. That's, because until we're all free, none of us are free,
I feel
and it's like, nobody wants to see that happen.
But I feel the situation of those people that turn to like, again, your PragerU or your conservative circles.
Yeah, because of money.
I feel like it's partly money, but I feel like it's an inward hatred.
It's an inward hatred, but it's some kind of an acceptance also.
Yeah, I think
in a way that they couldn't give themselves.
Yeah, it's a failure on their parts to find and their inner self, to find their inner ability, and they cannot find the validation within themselves. And places like PragerU is trying to give them some surface level of platform, but
by letting them, somehow making them feel like legitimizing, this internal hatred.
But
instead of saying like, I'm sorry that you went through this, recommending that they have therapy, a different kind of therapy than maybe what they've had in the past, trying to, help them understand who they are as a person. They're like, no, you're totally valid the way you are, but they're being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
I do. It's not healthy to, prey on these people in a terrible position. And that is exactly what places like PragerU and a lot of conservative media do when they put these people on,
Yeah, like I said, I have sympathy for anybody that has to detransition and figures out that trans wasn't what they were, and it's increasingly rare, but it does happen. Like it's not an absolute zero thing. And for the people that do, I feel nothing but sympathy for them. But I feel that there's lots of predatory, a lot of instances that confusion and that frustration gets turned into a form of self hatred.
Yeah, and there are predatory people out there who
will take advantage
will
of that.
take advantage of that
To satisfy their own agenda.
Their own, yes.
To show, like, to portray that as the norm. And basically, sooner or later, every trans person is going to figure out that they're unhappy, and all the therapy and all the hormones and all the processes to lead.
Because at the end of the day, what they're saying is trans people are mentally ill,
Yeah.
and should be. I mean, that's what a lot of them say. A lot of arguments are trans people are just mentally ill, and they parade out these people who have gone through, so much to detransition, and they're like, look at this person. They're miserable because, they're just being taken advantage of. Paraded around to say, look at all of this mental illness on display.
Yeah.
That surgery,
depravity, moral.
This moral depravity cannot fix what's really wrong.
Moral and societal decay. We need to get right with Jesus because Jesus.
Oh, that's definitely a part of it.
Jesus hates the quiz.
Yeah. But because there's. I mean, we could probably keep talking about this, but we've been talking for almost 2.5 hours. But that is to say that,
there's a lot to be said about
trans sports bans. This is literally just the tip of the iceberg onto a much, much larger world. It's not about trans girls playing sports. It's not about, in high school or college. It's not about trans women partaking in sports at elite levels. It's about people with agendas that feel that they need to destroy the lives of marginalized groups in order to retain their power in the world.
They're starting with the most fragile groups, and if you think it'll stop with trans people, if you think it'll stop with immigrants,
they're already talking about bringing down Obergefell. Obergefell was the Equal Marriage Equality Act in the Supreme Court,
which are one black male Supreme Court justice has gone down in record in saying that we should re-examine that case.
Oh no, it's
that who is in interracial marriage.
Yes. The man who is, and we have Loving versus the state of Virginia to thank for his marriage being legal. Yeah. But this is just the first domino that's going to fall, and then Obergefell, and then somewhere further down the line, Loving versus Virginia.
And Roe v. Wade
has already basically been gutted.
Yeah.
So
for all those Democrats on the 2 or 3 opportunities they had to codify Roe v. Wade into law every single time, because recently
this is their fault too.
Yeah. Because they were like, oh man, I don't want to upset my conservative base. Meanwhile, the conservative base is always happy to put up laws and regulations and statutes that disproportionately affect marginalized people, from whether it be the poor or whether it be somebody of color or whether it be a woman, whether it be a trans person. They don't give a shit if they hurt the feelings of the quote unquote the libtards.
It's the Ernest Rome principle. You can be a marginalized person who helps destroy more marginalized communities, but eventually they're going to come for your marginalized community, and they're going to come for you, and you're going to die in a concentration camp just like Ernest Rome did.
I think he was shot.
That's right. He was shot. I take it back. He wasn't put in a concentration camp. He was shot in a mass murder.
Yeah, it was the Night of the Long
Knives. That's right. That's when he was killed. But the thing is, it's like, And this is what we've been saying, class solidarity. We have more in common with each other, regardless of race, orientation, gender identity, than we do with the people who are in power and the people who have money. Usually those two groups are, if there's a Venn diagram of those two groups, they would be mostly a circle in this country. Solidarity needs to run along class lines more than it needs to run along any other line, because we are the only ones that can take care of each other. So we'll just do it. So I guess what we're saying is, transports bans are just another in a long line of ways that people in power try to keep those of us on the bottom from forming communities.
Yeah.
We're just the most recent scapegoat.
Yeah. It's taking marginalized people and making a distraction out of them to keep our eyes off the prize.
Exactly. Well, we've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes here. Do you want to finish up? Is there anything else you want to say about either topic?
No, I think I've covered everything I wanted to say.
I think we did pretty good today. We're going to go make dinner, and we'll see you guys on Friday then. All right. Have a good day. Take care of each other.